Alright everybody, this is going to be the installation video for the Gen1V diff brace for the first generation CTS-V, and we're going to do the installation on this cradle that's already dropped out from under the car, just because it's easier to see what's going on and get a good view of everything versus being under the car where you've got axles in the fuel tank and all that stuff in the way. You can't really get a good shot of what we're trying to do here. So you don't have to do that. There's no drilling, no cutting, no welding. You don't have to drop the cradle or anything. It just bolts right in. But let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is take out both the driver's side and the passenger side exhaust pipes. Over here, you're going to be accessing all of these bolts and getting a torque wrench in there. And then we're also going to be doing a lot of work up here where you need to be able to reach up in here, and the exhaust pipe is just in the way. And then over here on the passenger side, for one part of the installation, we're going to have to take this bolt out so that you can drop the nose of the diff down a little bit. And for another part, you're going to have to reach up, around the drive shaft and over the top of the diff and do some stuff up here. So having that exhaust pipe out of the way is a nice thing to have. Alright, so the first step is we're going to actually put the brace onto the diff. And to do that, you're going to remove 5 bolts around the front of the pinion and then 5 around the side of the diff cover. Another thing I like to do, here on the front of the pinion, there are these little raised markings. They just stick up just a little bit. And I like to take a file or a Dremel and just kind of sand those down flat, just so that over time, those don't, between the brace and the diff, those don't wear down, and then you wind up with, with the brace being a little bit loose because, originally it was tight against those raised letterings, but then once those letterings wear out, you can have a little bit of a gap there, and you don't want that. So I like to grind those off. But let's go ahead and get started and mount the brace onto the diff. Alright, now that the brace is installed loosely, I can still kind of move it around a little bit. The first thing I want to do is be sure to get the front face of the brace, flat against the front pinion, but also I want to get the side cover piece, pushed flat as well. So what I like to do is tighten this bolt a half a turn, and then tighten this bolt over here a half a turn. That way, we kind of evenly push the brace against both faces, and we don't wind up with, some kind of a space or an offset. If I went in here and tightened all of these bolts, but this wasn't pushed all the way, flat where it should be, then there's going to be a little bit of an air gap there, and you don't want that, right? So let's just go back and forth until we get the diff brace where we want it, pushed flat against both surfaces, and then we can go through and torque all of our bolts here. Alright, so now that that's done and it's nice and flat on both sides, I'll just go through and torque all of these bolts. Alright, I might just take this one out. This diff has been used so many times I've actually damaged those threads, and this bolt just doesn't want to go in, so I'm going to leave it out just for the purposes of this video. Obviously don't do that during your own install. But that's it, quick and easy. Once you've got these bolts torqued down, to the correct torque spec, then this part is done. Alright, so the next step is we're going to want to bend this brake line out of the way on the back side of this cradle. So I'll come over here and show you what I mean. And I've already bent this one a little bit, so it's not exactly right, but normally it would have one of these little plastic push pin clips in this hole right here, and it would have the brake line pushed really close to the cradle and you know, held in place. For this install, what you're going to need to do is, you know, take a crowbar, or, you know, if you have one of those little tools that you use to get the door panels and stuff off cars, you know, whatever you've got, just get it up in there and use it to pop that plastic piece out of its hole so that your brake line is loose. You just have to do this one. You don't have to do any of the other ones. There's one down there to the front, and then there's one over here to the back. That you leave those in place. And then what you're going to do is just, you know, bend this safely out of the way, because when that metal plate is here, you don't want that metal plate to be, you know, touching your brake lines. It could potentially, you know, rub a hole through that, and then that would be obviously really bad. You don't want that to happen. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen, is if it rubs a hole and you lose your brakes. So I would say this is your responsibility to do a really good job of bending this brake line safely out of the way. And it's something you should do at the very end of the install when you're all done and you're finished and you're ready to drop the car on the ground. The last thing you should do is just double check this brake line and make sure that you have it safely routed out of the way, so that it's never going to touch anything. It's really important. That's your responsibility as the installer. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to go ahead and put the U-bolts in place. And you know, when you have a CV right here and an axle, you don't have quite as much room as what I've got here for the video, but you can slip your hand through here or up through here. But basically, you're going to get this inside of there, and you'll get it flat like this, and then you'll just slide it across the top of the cradle, and it will fall down just like that. And there's an evap canister and some other things up here, but there's a little bit of a space, and so you just kind of fit it in between that space that's available between the, you know, the bottom of the car and the subframe here. So I'll do it like that, and then you'll do, you know, the same thing with this one. You'll fish it up through there, slide this one over to get it out of the way, and then that one's going to go just like that. Alright, with the nose of the diff dropped out of the way, what you can do is now you can fit this up into place now that it has room to slide into place. Make sure you put this jam nut on there first. You don't want to go through this whole install and realize at the end that you forgot to put this top jam nut on, so be sure to do that. I also like to put some WD-40, you know, on both surfaces of the bushing there, and it makes sliding this part on, you know, onto the bushing a whole lot easier. But at this point, now you just slide this into place. There we go. And then, you know, the hard part of this install, the hardest part, and this is where you just need to prepare yourself. You're going to get frustrated. This is where your patience is going to be tested a little bit. But getting this bolt in through the back side with the CV and the axle in the way is just a challenge. There's no other way to say it. So you can try it with the nose of the diff, you know, still dipped down. You can push it back up into place and put the bolt back in. If you want to try and go over the top, you know, you can try to rotate this around to different angles to try and get just the right, you got to just get the right angle so that you can get it in. But like I said, this is the hard part. This is the one part where you're going to get frustrated and you're probably going to cuss. and you just got to be prepared for it. That it will go in. It just takes a little bit of time and patience to find just the right angle so that you can get it in with the axle and the CV being right there behind it. Alright, now I've got the bolt in from the back side. I haven't torqued it yet because I still want it to be loose so that I can kind of rotate the bushing and the mount here. But next you just want to push this up. You know, you want to kind of guide your U-bolts into place, kind of get them into the right spot so that when you push this up, the U-bolts will kind of go into their holes, kind of just like that. And then while you hold it from the bottom, put all 4 nuts on there. Just kind of get them finger tight for now, just so that you're not having to hold this thing up while we do the next step. And this is the part where, you know, with your exhaust out of the way, you can go up and over the top of the diff, and that'll give you enough room to get in here and get this nut into place right here. Alright, so with this loose, I'm going to go ahead and push that back into place. You may have already done that to get your bolt in. Like I said, it's just, you got to find your way of doing that. But go ahead and torque this front mount back because we're done. We're not going to have to take that back off. Okay, the next step is going to be just go ahead and take this bottom jam nut and thread it on, and let's go ahead and push this up into place and thread that down so that it kind of pushes the bushing up into place and holds it against the cradle. You can take a wrench if you want to and kind of get that tight. But the important thing, I don't know if you can see this in the video or not, but you want to get this bushing angled correctly. You don't want it off to the side, because if you had that off to the side, then your nut is not going to sit, perfectly flat on this surface and on the bottom surface. You want it to be nice and flat and to sandwich that plate. So you kind of have to, wiggle things around, get it to the right spot. And like I said, I like to use this top nut to push your bushing all the way up against the cradle. As you tighten that, it'll push that up. So then we'll get the bottom one into place, and don't worry if it's not 100% perfect. If there's just a slight offset and you're looking in there with a flashlight and you're thinking, man, I don't know, it's not 100%. Remember, when you get in here and you torque this with a wrench, this is a rubber bushing, right? So it's got some flexibility and some give to it. And so once you really torque these into place correctly, that bushing is gonna have some flexibility to it and let you get that just last little bit. But you just want to do a good job of not having it horribly offset one way or the other. You want to get it just as close as you can, and then let the rubber bushing do the rest there at the end. But be sure to get it pushed, all the way up against the cradle. And once you've done that, you can go in here and, use a deep socket and go ahead and, get these all tightened up and torqued down. You can reach 2 of these with a socket. This back one back here can be kind of tough. I think I had to use a wrench. I don't remember if I was able to use a socket with the axle there. And then this one, you have to go over the top with just a regular, box end wrench and get it all the way. But go ahead and get all of these nice and tight, and then be sure, by the way, whenever you put this nut on, be sure to use the Loctite that I supply. This can vibrate loose over time, You know, it can lose its tightness and then vibrate loose and then fall out from under the car onto the highway. So be sure to use that Loctite, because you know this is what does the work, right? It's what holds the diff in place. So use that Loctite so that this jam nut stays into place. Use Loctite on the top one. You know, go ahead and use Loctite on all of these, and after that we'll pretty well be done. Alright, so we're basically done. The last two steps, number one, are just go over all of the fasteners and make sure that you torqued everything down. Make sure that you applied Loctite everywhere, and that nothing's loose, that you got everything the way that you want it. And then the very last thing, before you drop the car on the ground and go have some fun, is just to double check this brake line. Remember, we talked about that earlier in the video, and we just want to make sure, you know, that there's good clearance back behind here. We don't want this brake line to be anywhere close to even touching either this metal plate. We don't want it to be close to the diff. We don't want it to be close to the CV or the axles. Just make sure it's clear of everything and not in danger of, you know, of contacting anything that could ever cause, you know, wear on this tube to eventually wear through that and cause you to lose your brake system. So I guess that's it. We're all done. At this point, you can lower the car back down on the ground, and hope you enjoyed the product, hope you enjoyed the video, and go have some fun. Thanks everybody. Bye.